Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name's Matt Moore. I'm senior NBA writer for the Action Network. And lo and behold, look who I found. I dragged up Brandon Anderson back from the NFL dungeons at Action Network after another successful season. And we're going to do a little What Have You Missed today, where Brandon and I are going to go over not only some of the big questions. We'll talk about Victor Wembanyama today. We'll hit on some futures. We'll talk about the Western Conference playoff picture. But we'll also kind of like do a little bit of review over some of the futures that we had. I went back this morning and I listened to all of our win totals and all, not just the best bets. I didn't go back and listen to every episode. I went back and listened to all of our best bets for every division, as well as our long shots. So I have a lot for us to kind of like review and go over, but it's good to see you, my man. I'm glad to see you back here on Buckets.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I guess to be totally fair, I have escaped the dungeons of the NFL, but as you can see if you're watching on video, I have not quite escaped the actual dungeon yet. I'm still in North Dakota with my family. I'm still in the actual dungeon of the home, of my parents' home for one more day. I'm heading back to my home base near Chicago over the weekend. So yeah, I guess on that note, first of all, just give an update. I know, Matt, you talked with the folks here in Buckets about my family and gave an update. So mom is actually at the cardiologist as we speak, just for kind of the routine checkup, where today is four weeks since her heart surgery. Surgery was successful. It is, slow going. It's slow going is the right way to go. We're just kind of on the slow but steady progress, and things are, as far as we all can see, moving in the right direction. And it's just a matter of like day-to-day pain management and lots of home therapy visits and home nurses. And I think soon we'll transition to out of home, all of those things, and, all that fun stuff. And hopefully going forward, probably for my whole family, really, some lifestyle changes and better sleep and eating. And, Matt, you and I are in our 40s. So this is kind of the stage where we're both a little bit like, well, we probably gotta, make some of these changes ourselves too, so that we're not right back in these shoes ourselves soon enough. So yeah, I am appreciative of the support that you all have given me, my family, my friends, the Action Network family, Buckets family, and Action Network pod listeners, just followers on social media. You guys have really reached out, and I appreciate you checking in. Appreciate you praying for my family, sending good thoughts. I know many of you have supported through GoFundMe and other ways. I certainly appreciate that as well, and that's made a huge help for us. That still is open if you did want to give, but just it feels like we're a month out. Feels like we're kind of sort of ready to move forward. I'm ready to move forward into March Madness waters and NBA waters and NBA playoffs. And I've kind of like done my best to catch up a little bit. And really, this is for me as much as it is for listeners. Some of you maybe just watch a lot of football and are kind of crawling back into the NBA space. So hopefully this just kind of catches us all up together a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll put the GoFundMe, by the way, for Brandon's family in the episode description as well here on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts and Spotify on the podcast version. Programming note, hope you guys enjoyed Live Buckets this week. It's been phenomenal. We've really enjoyed it. We're going to be doing that twice a week. You can catch the next episode on Monday nights at 11 Eastern with me and Jay Money and a rotating pack of guests. So make sure to check out our Live Buckets show as well. And if you want to get notified, just download the Action Network app. It's the best way for you to track your picks. Everything we talk about today can be found in there. You can double check us on some of these futures that we had, the good and the bad. So Brandon, you've been gone. Where do you want to start, buddy? Where do you want to get caught up? What can I help explain to you about this 2024 NBA season?
Well, I think the only real place to start is, last I was on Buckets, we were all hyped. Our team of the year, our team of the podcast, in on Coach of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, 1 seed, title odds. Tell me about my Grizzlies. How are we doing?
Oh no. Oh boy. The Grizzlies bats went a little sideways on us. And he's joking, but like we ran into this problem. I will say this. I got asked a question about this by somebody I ran into, a Buckets listener I actually ran into, which doesn't happen very often, but it was great when it does. And he was like, what do you think happened with the Grizzlies bet? And I was like, well, he's like, was it just Ja? And I was like, no. I was like, we probably would not have been as big on them. We weren't the minute that Steven Adams was announced
Yep.
out the week before the season started. Like the minute that happened, there was a collective, oh no. In part because in retrospect, I think it's like the Grizzlies were a team that was constructed on an identity, and they weren't able to get to that identity without bigs and missing not just Steven Adams but Brandon Clark. It's a compound injury situation. It's a cluster injury in football when all the wide receivers are out. All of the bigs, or a cluster injury on the offensive line, I think is maybe a better way to put it, because all of those bigs being out really shaped the way they were going to survive without Ja. Was they were going to, like, okay, they're not going to be great, but they're going to be fine because Desmond Bane's going to take a big leap. He did. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be terrific. He has been. And Taylor Jenkins is a heck of a coach. Yes, he is. But it was also going to be like they're going to play great defense, and they weren't able to do that without the bigs that they needed. Now, in retrospect, also, I've gotta remember this for next time. And like, look, it was a season from hell for Memphis where like Marcus Smart went down, and then Bane was out for months, and then back, and then out for months again. Like they just had one of those seasons from hell, and that happens. But one thing I will remember, Brandon, next time is like when I look at a bench and I go, yikes, up and down. When I'm not like, ooh, I like that guy, I have to be like, ooh, I like that guy about like two of them in order, unless the starting five is like the Nuggets. Because I'm kind of like, I'm not, ooh, I like that guy with Peyton Watson. He's good. But I'm not like, ooh. And so if it's not like a Nuggets level starting five, I better have some level of confidence and energy about some of the bench guys, because I will say, David Roddy, who by the way looked really good on the Suns the other night, but he was bad as a power forward. Zaire Williams did not make a jump. Like this entire bench unit, I think is going to be different for the Grizzlies next season. And that if they walked away from this season being like, we have to totally reshape our bench, and they've gotten some great contributors, like Vince Williams has been great, VWJ has been great, and they've gotten Gigi Jackson's been a revelation.
No.
I don't know how you felt about him in the draft, but yeah, I don't think we're gonna win. We're gonna win any of our Grizzlies bets, considering that they've already cashed the under on the season. So we are up a creek there, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to the takeaways there, I believe on the eve of the season, like I think like Sunday, a few days before the season started, we had a 24-hour window. We had the Adams news, and we also had like the big John Moran article about how rough the summer was and all of the background information.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say in hindsight, and this does not excuse the bets. I made all the bets. I'm losing all the bets. If we recorded our entire season preview magically on the day of the season starting, I not only don't think we would have been so heavy on the Grizzlies, I'm certain we would not have been. I'm not really sure we would have been anything on the Grizzlies. We would have been way less on all of the positions. Yeah. I'm certain not on Jenkins, Coach of the Year, certainly not on the 1 seed. Like something was rotten in the state of Denmark as soon as that stuff started coming out. And certainly I never expected it to be this bad. Like I can't sit here and be like, oh yeah, well I would have bet them to go under 30 wins or something. Like certainly not. We thought the other way. On the bench guys, I was going to mention that as well. You and I always talk through on the draft stuff. I have huge trust in Grizzlies front office, but they draft the guys who I have like off of my draft board routinely, draft pick after draft pick, but then they work. Like they usually come through. And so I did not like Santi Aldama that much, or David Roddy, or Zaire Williams, or down on the line. I didn't like these picks all that much. I didn't like Gigi Jackson. I had him basically off my draft board, and that one obviously looks like a hit. I kind of was just trusting that, well, I don't love these bench guys, but the Grizzlies keep finding them and turning them into something. Like, that's how I feel about Heat draft picks, and the Heat usually guys tend to come through also. So sometimes it's just not my style of player, and they come through. The question that I had that I consider for myself is, normally it would be, I think, wise to diversify your assets, right? To not go all in, because what if it all goes badly? Except I've had a pretty good history with futures, NBA, NFL, and if I get the team right, like Houston Texans back from NFL, you should go all in, because then you want the
Yeah.
Stroud ticket, and you want the Coach of the Year ticket, and you want the playoffs, and you want. So I went against my instincts, and probably in most years wouldn't have done so many Grizzlies angles. And this year, that was just the team that I liked.
Yeah.
That was my one team I felt most certain about. And I don't think I regret going all in on it. Obviously, the read was wrong. Obviously, the bets are all wrong. That's not excusing it. But I think if you got a read you like, and you've got a lot of angles that are going to correlate to it, you're going to play the read. And if we were right that the Grizzlies were going to be that good, if they were what the Thunder are right now, then suddenly we'd have an MVP candidate and a Rookie of the Year candidate and a Coach of the Year candidate, just like the Thunder do potentially, or whatever it would be for the Grizzlies, obviously. So I think that's the takeaways, to think through those things. I don't know that you necessarily can say, well, those were all terrible bets. They obviously weren't good bets. We're not going to take any credit for them, but that one did not go well for us. What other teams did you hear about as you look back on our futures? Who else do we need to talk through here?
Honestly, a big takeaway is I was just like, God, Brandon's good at this. Like, I'm not just trying to like gas you up here, because long-time listeners know I hate to do that. My guy had Spurs under 30.5. Yes, they have 13 wins. He had Mavs over 44.5. They got to go 11-9 to hit that. It's gonna be a squeaker, I think, because the Mavs are up and down. He's probably gonna hit that. And he had Rockets under 31.5. That one's gonna go down to the wire. There's a reason that I bet out of that possession right before the beginning of the season, because I saw how good Ime Udoka, the big kind of impact he was having on them. And honestly, if Tari Eason hadn't gotten hurt midseason, that the over was already there. They're going to be a team, depending on what they do with Jalen Green this summer, that I'm going to be looking to bet they're over next year. Oh, by the way, Jalen Green may not be with the Rockets next year. There's some news for you, Brandon. Like they might be moving on from Jalen Green in the summer. It would not shock anyone in the NBA if they moved on from Jalen Green this summer. The other one I think that we were really big on, which we're actually in a kind of where it's tight, but I think we're probably going to get home on, is the Cleveland Cavaliers. And you were on their division before you were on the over. You like, division was a multi-unit bet, but you also had the over 50.5. They got to go 11-9 to get there, which I think they still will. Injuries are a problem. Donovan Mitchell is out at least one more game after getting a PRP for a bone bruise, but it's just a bone bruise, and so I'm hopeful that maybe he gets back here in a handful of games. Evan Mobley's going to miss several weeks, and everyone's like, oh no, and I'm kind of like, when they got hurt back while you were gone, when Darius Garland and Evan Mobley went down, I was like, well, there goes those two. We lost Grizzlies and we lost Cavs, and then somehow they just won. Sam Merrill is a revelation. Dean Wade beat the Celtics by himself the other night. They've gotten great contributions from just about everybody. My biggest problem right now, honestly, Brandon, with trying to figure out the Cavaliers is it's hard for me not to be like, to look at this and go, man, JB Bickerstaff's a great coach. And you know how frustrated I was with him in the playoffs last year. But this is back-to-back years, and this one is the more impressive one. If it wasn't for what Dags is doing with OKC, with the youngest roster in the league, and if it wasn't for the fact that Maz is going to have the Celtics at 65-plus wins, like, I would probably be advocating very loudly that JB Bickerstaff needs to be coach of the year, because he has managed a roster with like a lot of bit players in very big roles this season due to injury, and they're still going to be at least close to, if not over 50 wins. So, and look, the division stuff, we got a really good number on it. It's going to be close. We're in a great position right now. If you tailed us on Cavaliers division at plus 275 preseason, you're in a great spot to hedge right now. Like, you can still get the Bucks at a very reasonable number, and you still have a lot of liquidity with the Cavs based off of that number. So that was one of our better ones, was the Cavaliers, despite so many things going wrong for them, have found a way to keep winning this season.
Yeah, I noticed too. I saw when I kind of did my All-Star break catch-up, I posted my All-Star teams on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days. I had Jared Allen as my last All-Star spot in the East, and I certainly would not have expected that. Like, that is not the sort of player I usually would choose as an All-Star spot. He's been awesome. And yeah, I I was like, oh man, thought we had the Cavs bet, and now everyone's getting hurt again. And then it was like, well, I don't know. Last time Mobley went out is kind of when everything took off for them. And, we've talked a lot about these double big lineups, and do they need to move on from one of the two, presumably Allen at some point. maybe there's an at some point. Right now, they've played really well when they've had just the two guys, even to the point where I've noticed that they stagger them. They play well with two together and then the other two on the bench. And then, we got to actually play them all in a crunch time. I'm not sure that's our best lineup, but I think they'll be an interesting team down the stretch here. I don't know that we necessarily need to write them off for the odds like you talked about. And then I'm sure we'll have much to say about them on playoff matchups. Yeah, the Bickerstaff thing, I hadn't even thought about that. I did all-star coaches too, and he wasn't even really someone that I considered for that. But certainly, yeah, when you see these injuries stack up like this, and you see I'm always a big proponent of defense, regular season. I think we have to accept at this point, Bickerstaff is a regular season really good coach, but then we're gonna have to get to when we get to the playoffs, is does that work in the playoffs, and how do the differences go there? Um, I see on our list Hornets. Yeah, Hornets obviously didn't work out. That was just a long shot for us. For me, I won't put you on that. I think I may have nudged you into a little bit of a Hornets position, but they've had their usual injuries. They're just obviously not
It
good.
wasn't you.
Uh, it was a bet
Yeah, I mean, it
against
wasn't
the
you.
rest of the division, and I think that we were right to bet
Mhm.
against the rest of the division. We just picked the wrong team. It should have been the Magic. Obviously, that'd be a great position to have right
Yeah.
now. So I got the wrong team there. What about the Pacific? Warriors, Clippers. Where? What bets did we have on that? You were on Clippers division, I believe, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna make one of my biggest wins this season is gonna be the Clippers division because not only did I bet
Right.
them preseason, but when I saw them in Denver after the Harden trade and they'd lost 6 straight and the market was abandoning them and just bailing on them, I bought in at that point, and then as soon as I saw them look good for about a handful of games, I bought in more. So I've got a big position on Clippers division. You want to know how big the Clippers division position is and how well it's worked out, Brandon? I never hedged it. I
Oh,
didn't I
wow.
didn't build like this big like I didn't build like this big complicated portfolio with these other teams. I think I had like a small bet on Sacramento as like a tiny hedge on it. Once Booker went down, and then that's it. And I just kind of kept adding. I didn't get shaken by a lot of things. Now, like the Clippers are pretty average in their last 8 games, but they're still going to cruise to this division win, and they're going to hit their overs. So that's a good win for us. The Warriors are maybe the most interesting. You and I had a divide over that. Over you love the Warriors division at plus 350. I have Warriors to miss the playoffs, and then I bought back in on them after Draymond came back from
Yeah.
suspension and they rattled off a bunch of wins. Um, so I've got like I'm going to come out ahead no matter what. I hedged that one. That's like a good example of hedging appropriately, where I was ahead of the market on the Warriors are going to have problems, and then they had problems, and then I looked at the schedule and was like, this it doesn't matter. They're going to roll through a bunch of bad teams. Got a good win last night versus the Bucks, and I was able to get a +3. Like I bet them at like I think a +5 to miss the playoffs, and then bet them the other way at +300.
Hmm.
So got a good price on both, but I will say that there's a lot of people trying to make the Warriors into a contender. Last night is another example of like, oh hey, maybe this is like I don't see it with the Warriors. I just think that they're done. I think that they remind me. The only way that they're going to make a run is if they pull off something that is very similar to the 2010 Boston Celtics. That's the kind of
Hmm.
team that they remind me of now.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I remember from, I believe, 2 years ago, going into the season that they won the title. I had in my offseason notes for them, all right, this is a last dance type team. This is the team, like, if you've watched basketball for decades, like both of us have, you see these teams and they basically, like, they go down swinging, right? Like they lose in 7 in a huge crazy series. There's some late buzzer beater where Steph steals a game late. Like, they're clearly outmatched, but they maybe even steal a series, get to a next round. But like, they're they're the team that the next team has to overcome now, right? I don't know that they're the team anymore. And that's what I thought 2 years ago. Then it turned out they were still the team and they won a title. And so now I think we've kind of all done this thing where, like, well, even though we're kind of like 4 years past expiration date, I guess we still have to believe. And like, me, like I'm Warriors guy. Like I want to believe. The Draymond stretch right after that for a couple of weeks, they were tearing it up. The numbers were incredible. Offensive rating, defensive rating. Then you check the schedule and you're like, oh, I see. Well, turns out when you play all the terrible teams, you can look really good. And then I forget, I had my article from earlier in the week. I think there's something like 3-15 against teams seated above them in the West right now. 3-15 is not very good. 3-15 is you might get swept in the playoffs bad. I don't think they're going to get swept, but we've seen that too. We've seen other versions of great champion teams struggle and claw and fight and make the playoffs. And then you watch the first game of a series and you're like, oh, this is going to end very badly. And I don't think that we're past the point of that possibly being the case with the Warriors too. Like there are matchups where we might get that version of a series too. So I'm not ready to bury them, I think, quite as ready as you are, but that might just be my Steph heart of hearts that won't let me quite get there. But yeah, I wanted to be Team Warriors, and this is the long shot to buy in on right now. And there's just not a lot of numbers or reason there. Like it's got to just be the blind faith of Warriors belief, and I'm not sure it's there anymore. I hope we at least get the spirited fight. I want them to make the playoffs. Even that, they might have to win a couple road games just to get in to face the 1 seed, and then depending on what the matchup is there. So yeah, the Chris Paul thing, I was very high on that. Hasn't worked out. I don't think it's been terrible, but it certainly hasn't helped them very much. Team has gotten a little better. Kuminga's, I think, finally playing well. Wiggins, we don't know what's happening with that. He finally looked like Wiggins again, the good version he'd become with them for like the same 3 weeks that they played well, not coincidentally. And then now he's missed again. We wish him well. But like, I think that was a big part of what was going well. It's not like Clay had this great resurgence or CP was back. Like Wiggins and Kuminga were a part of why they were surging. And I think if you listen to that part of the sentence and then say, okay, so Warriors, maybe a little caution there. So yeah, the West is wild.
There's also a lot of from the Warriors side of things. Like there's a lot of like, oh, they just had to stop playing Kevon Looney. Like all his minutes are terrible. He just doesn't need to play. And I'm like, guys, you realize how important he was to your one, you need centers right now. Like everyone needs bigs. Everyone needs bigs right now with where the league is. And two, like he was central to your success in 2022. So if you don't have him, Kuminga is more versatile, but Kuminga is not as strong. And you just need like that tough, good defense. And so I think it's pretty difficult. One thing I did want to kind of touch on, we had 3 fairly big positions from over the summer, and we're going to go 2 of 3, and they were Bucks under, Nuggets under, Celtics over. Celtics over. Yep. We nailed it. It was, you and I were in lockstep on the Celtics are going to be an absolute juggernaut and they're going to win. They were a 55.5 win total. And you and I were like, I am not fazed by this number. Like usually that 55.5 scares the hell out of me. And I find ways to go the other way. Like I want to bet under 55.5s, but they projected out so well that we both went in and that one's going to cash. Bucks under, they still have to go 14-5 to close to get over the 56.5 that you and I bet them after the Damian Lillard trade. And that's, 12-7, which is maybe more doable for the 54.5. No, I'm sorry. That's just for the 54.5. I apologize. That's the 54.5 that they have to be able to get over is 14-5. So they got to go 16-3 to hit the 56.5 that we talked about earlier. We're going to cash on that one. Bucks honestly won more games under Adrian Griffin than they should have. They were ahead of Win Pythagorean, all the stuff that tells you, oh, this team's probably not that good, which is why everyone was like, those of us that kind of followed things closely were not surprised when they fired Adrian Griffin. That the Doc Rivers early period was basically normalizing that, where they won more games than they should have with Adrian Griffin, and they lost more games with Doc Rivers early on than they should have. At the same time, like they are now no longer a playoff. Like I have talked about this on multiple shows. Last night's another proof of it. I will not bet them. I do not have a Bucks position because I cannot get there with Doc Rivers as a coach. I just can't get there. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So I can't really get there on that position. Nuggets, unfortunately, this is just infuriating. In order for the under to hit on their preseason closing line of 53, they just got to go, for them to go under, they got to go 10-10 the rest of the way. 11-9 hits the over on 53. I bet them at 50. I bet the under at 54.5, 55.5, 54.5, which might hit. And then again at 53.5, and that one might lose. They're another team that they probably won more games than they should, but they're also the team that I've said has the most championship equity because they consistently find ways to win. Now, yep. I think they're going to slow down a little bit here in the next couple of weeks, which is going to get us finally a window to maybe bet them to win the title at the number I want, because I do think they still have the most championship equity. But I got to say, buddy, we nailed Celtics, we nailed Bucks, and we still nailed Nuggets, even if that one, if we lose that one, it's going to be like 1 or 2 games. We were very on point with those positions.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was surprised that you seemed at first be counting Nuggets as a loss. I think that one's still in play. Like, certainly we don't expect this team to go 500, but like we've seen this team just totally, go down to like first gear for a couple of weeks near the end of the season. And especially we're not really doing MVP today, but like if Jokic stays in the front running spot and suddenly just kind of wants to get rid of that for a couple of weeks, like that's a possibility. We saw that last year. Like, I think that's in play. I actually wanted to, I'm going to transition us into that division, because that was one of my other big positions that I had a 2-unit bet on the Timberwolves plus 700 to win the division. And I should be feeling great about that, except Matt Moore today on my grand return to buckets, my Timberwolves, your Timberwolves, yours more than mine, have announced that Karl-Anthony Towns has a meniscus injury. And right now, as we're recording, to my knowledge, we don't really know much timetable. We had an indefinite report. We had a might not miss any time report. I wonder a little bit if this is an Evan Mobley type situation, and maybe we might be overreacting to like, oh no, season over. I don't know necessarily. Obviously, it's a different sort of injury. What I didn't expect when I made the Timberwolves bet, I thought the Timberwolves would be somewhere near this good because of the defense. I thought the Nuggets would have foot off the gas pedal. You and I disagreed on the third team in the mix, because I didn't think there would be a third team in the mix. Holy thunder, they are in the mix and then some. So I did not see this coming with the Thunder. With SGA, you talked me into a half-unit SGA MVP position, which I'm happy to have. Where do you help me out with? Like, let's talk through the Timberwolves thing, and then help me out on my 2 units plus 700. I haven't had any hedge. I haven't really been able to do much hedging as I've just been out of things this year. Obviously, like, that ticket is still very live, but it is very live in the context of the Thunder and the Nuggets both having a chance to steal. The fact that there's 2 of them makes it hard to hedge. What do I do with tickets, or with the Timberwolves plus 700 ticket?
So you can still, here's the nice thing about it. You can still get a good price as it currently sits on the Thunder. And what I think is fascinating is the books are just like, they will not, and I think it's mostly handle. I just think that Denver took so much preseason money that now at the end of the year, they have to price things a certain way, where Denver's plus, there's a book that's got them plus 115 for the division, with the Thunder then following up at plus 110. And now the Wolves are plus 450, which is obviously closer to where you were at with the 700, still good CLV. There's still a possibility in which the Wolves win this division. Like, that is definitely on the table. I'm not just like, oh, Towns is out, they're done. I don't think that's true. One, we don't know how long he's going to be out. Shams reported that he's going to be out indefinitely, and then almost immediately Woj reported that they don't know if he misses any time. And I'm like, he tore his meniscus. I'm very confused between this and the Embiid thing, where I'm just like, apparently you can just tear your meniscus and it's fine now. Like, it's just like, it's fine. Who really needs a meniscus anyway? Because like the way that these injuries are talked about is just not how it used to be, where it used to be like, oh, he tore his meniscus, he's done for the year. And like a lot of that is, I don't know if you know this, but I'm not a doctor. And so that tends to influence things pretty significantly. At BetMGM, our odds for the Northwest Division are currently down as they try and evaluate. Oh, no, I found them. Thunder's plus 115. So Thunder's plus 115, Nuggets plus 125, and then Wolves plus 475. So you can effectively get these different numbers. What I would tell you is I would just bet Thunder. Now, You'd be proud of me. I have kind of come to a position where I was like, you have to just accept you're going to lose sometimes. Like, you have to bet these things based off of the analysis that you do, and you just like you can't bet every team. And so I'm like, look, if I'm wrong and the Nuggets do wind up taking this one seed, then I'm going to lose all these bets that I've got on the Thunder division and the Wolves division and Thunder one seed that I got early in the season, et cetera, et cetera. Like I'm going to lose all those. But the books have consistently just been like, nope, it's going to be Denver. It's going to be Denver. And I don't see it be on for a number of reasons, including Denver's tiebreaker situation is not good with these guys. The Thunder, while you were gone, OKC went into Denver and won twice.
Yeah.
Like they have tiebreaker over the Nuggets, which is crazy. Also, the Wolves have a 1-0 lead with 3 to play versus Denver. So effectively, a lot of what can happen here is the Wolves control their own destiny, where they're 2-2 with OKC. They can win tiebreaker literally by beating the Nuggets 3 more times. And that would give them tiebreaker over both teams, and they would be in a very good position based off of win-loss profile to win those games. I think it's going to be Thunder 1, Wolves 2, Nuggets 3, Clippers 4. Like, that's my projection where I've got it right now. That tracks with a logical sense for me, too. Like, that's my projection based off of power rating. And if you just told me, hey, what do you think is going to happen? That's what I would think is going to happen. I think it's going to be Thunder 1, Wolves 2, Nuggets 3, Clippers 4. So if you're going to hedge, I would literally just go find the best price on the Oklahoma City Thunder in the market. I will tell you, this doesn't mean that I think they're going to win in the playoffs. I've had a lot of conversations about that. I'm still deciding on those things. I'm not in any rush to bet OKC from a playoffs perspective, but I will absolutely tell you this. OKC isn't just a better team from a regular season perspective than Denver. They are better by a significant margin. Denver wins small, tight games that if a number of things go differently, they can lose. The Suns game this week being a prime example of this. OKC wins by margin. They are awesome in the regular season. All of these playoff questions are valid, but the OKC has been the singular most impressive team to me this season. I love them coming into the year. Bet they're over. Did not think that they were going to be not only this good, half as good as they have been this season.
Yeah, I mean, I did not expect this season from Chet Holmgren, even though I've been the Chet guy for a couple of years already. I certainly didn't think we'd get this good this fast. I didn't see the sleep coming from Jalen Williams, some of the bench guys, Isaiah Joe stepping up, like some of those guys like that. And I frankly, I didn't see SGA getting to this level of play to where he is seriously in the MVP race and putting up the BPMs and EPMs and like up at and near the top of all the charts. I didn't see all of it. Like we've talked about like youth and young teams and growth not being linear necessarily. Well, guess what? This wasn't linear either. This was exponential in the right direction with all of these guys taking off. And I think Daignault is going to probably win Coach of the Year and get a lot of credit for that, and should. And it's been incredible and certainly not something I expected. To the Timberwolves, I guess I just hope that we get to I hope Towns gets to play in the playoffs. Like at the very least, I hope we get to see that. And I think from a Timberwolves perspective, they need to see it, because as great as this season is, the big picture scope of Timberwolves, just for a second, is I think that they're already something like $200 million to the next year's salary cap before they add on some of the fringe guys, rookies, whatever. Well, rookies, we don't have any draft picks for the next like decade in Minnesota, but they needed to see, is this one seed type juggernaut an actual thing in the playoffs too? They need to see that, because McDaniel's extension kicks in. Conley's signed now on a great contract, but for a lot of money. It's Minnesota. It's a small market team. You can't pay $200 million in mega luxury tax on a team that's going to lose in the first round year after year. You can't do that. And we've seen that happen with Gobert teams in the past. One of my takes that I texted you before this news today is that I was going to come on and be grouchy Timberwolves fan, as I always am, and say that the Timberwolves are not going to win a first round playoff series. That was before the Towns injury. They need to know if that's a true thing or not, because there's a ton of money coming up next year. They need to decide, are we sure we're all in on this team? So I hope we get to find out some version of an answer to that. just a note on a bet I've got my eye on. I won't do it yet. Naz Reid, sixth man of the year, maybe. I can't think of who. I wish I
Yes.
gave you a shout out.
Yes.
Someone was in my DM suggesting him. He's the guy who's going to get more minutes and more points in production. Like, you win sixth man of the year by getting stats, and you might win sixth man of the year by not being a sixth man anymore, because he's still going to qualify from the first 2/3 of the season, making him a bench player. But if he suddenly gets like 12 more minutes a game and a bunch more shots because he's the guy, it's not like Gobert is going to start shooting all of Towns' shots. I think that's a ticket that I would be interested in a market that I don't think has really a clear leader or winner right now. So to me, that's my Timberwolves takeaways. You like the Naz Reid ticket?
I love it. I bet it yesterday. I had forgotten to put it in the app. He's Malik Monk, I think, had a signature game last night on national TV versus the Lakers, and that's going to hurt. But I do think, I said this the other day, that I think if you ask the voters who this season has been like a six man that stands out to you, I honestly think most of them, the first name they're going to mention is going to be Naz Reid. And I don't know if that's going to win it, because if they dive into it, again, he doesn't fit our profile of high profile scorer. The team part does. Like we talked about this when we did how to bet it. Hey, you got to find a team that's going to win a lot of games. Like, they got to be a playoff team. And then you just take like, who's a great scorer off the bench for a playoff team. He's not that. The scoring isn't there. Malik Monk, though, is second behind Bogdanovich in Atlanta, who's not going to make the playoffs. I do think that most writers, I think, have seen when they've come through, hey, you know who's been really great for them is Naz Reid. And so I think that especially there's a 19-1 in the market, to me, that there's value on that ticket. I'm willing to bet it in a market that continues. There's no good candidate. Even Malik Monk doesn't fit our historical qualifiers on this. So I'm willing to take the ticket on 19-1. You have caught up on some things. And so, I want to touch base on the Wolves thing real quick, because he did ask me about this. I think one thing I'll say, I don't know that they're done, and this could be a very interesting stretch. I wrote up the injury for Action Network, and look, the data says that they're going to crater, because the Wolves' problem is that their offensive floor overall is very low, that they are never going to be able, they just do not have nights where they cook you offensively. Even on, it doesn't matter the context, like they just do not have those nights. Their defensive floor is the highest in the league. You are not gonna put up a big number on them. They are elite defensively in every aspect, with every unit on the floor, with every rotation to a man. They are elite. But offensively, their floor is very low. And so without Towns, the numbers say that that's going to dip. I am very curious, though, if he doesn't play. I'm not saying they'd be better without him. They'd be better with him, because I think Towns has played well this year. I am very curious, though, what happens if this team gets into a first-round series and it's like they found something with Anthony Edwards, Gobert, and another shooter on the floor. I have real questions about Jaden McDaniels, who I have a number of kind of concerns with. I think he's a really great player. I just have he fouls a lot. Like, you're going to hear me talking in the playoffs about betting, depending on who they play, Jaden McDaniel unders, because I'm anticipating foul trouble. It's an issue for him. He gets in foul trouble. And the offense isn't consistent enough for me to feel good about it. But I do think that Finch might be able to find a way. And if they come out of this and they're like, man, we made a run without Towns, I think that's going to spur some action this summer. And I reported a lot on this year about how I thought it was possible Towns got moved. And I think that they were so successful, you couldn't, And again, I think Carl's had a great year. I think Cat's had a phenomenal season. I think he's been great. He's averaged like 22-8 on 50, 40, 88 splits. Like, he's been terrific. But I do think it's going to be very interesting to watch. Speaking of interesting to watch, I know that you have done some deep dives and you have paid attention to some stuff. I'm very interested to hear this. I understood completely why you were a Wembanyama skeptic. By the way, maybe our worst take of the preseason of the entire offseason was our Scoot stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Just the worst stuff we could have ever said. I think we learned a lot. I think we're going to have this conversation when we get to the draft and Rookie of the Year stuff. G League Ignite guys are going to have to be put into their own special place that we just set aside and go, we'll see. A lot of questions about that. But you were a Victor Wembanyama skeptic relative to the hype because for a number of reasons. But you wrote a lot about it, and the logic was sound, as it always is with you. But I know that you've gone back and you've really done some work on Victor to understand him, and so I want to give you the floor just to talk about Victor Wembanyama, who to me encapsulates the word phenom better than maybe any player I've ever seen.
Yeah, maybe better than anyone. When we were talking about what we're going to do for this show today, the two concepts we talked through was, so what'd you miss on my behalf, and what are Brandon's takes? And as I started to kind of think through, okay, what are my ideas for this? Like 3 of my ideas for both of them was just Wembanyama. I texted you like, well, should we just do like an entire Wembanyama episode? Like the guy, I don't even know how to put words into it. The guy is incredible. He is better already right now. Like, I think that there's a world where on my level of skepticism of what the overall, like, it was a skepticism about what would he be immediately, because I thought that it would take some time. He'd need to add some, some NBA strength to his frame. The rookie of the year position, clearly bad, was a position on the immediacy of what he would be, more so than will he ever become that. That said, he's so good already that he's already like in the high echelon of what I thought his end product would be as a rookie coming out of France right now. Like, we've all watched him. I don't know how to even to try to pretend that I have words to describe what he is, because he's better than what all the words are for him. I think that since January 1st, if we did all NBA by calendar instead of by season, since January 1st, I think Wembanyama is not just all NBA. I think he's first team all NBA. I think he would have a case for the 5th spot on the first team all NBA behind the 4 guys that we're all championing for MVP. It's those 4. And I think Wemby has been so good after that. I think it's him. We had in our long shots episode, we had blocks leader 25-1. We had, as not a long shot, the best bet we gave out all preseason, Victor Wembanyama to record 5 blocks in any game of the season, his rookie year at -150. One of the worst lines I've ever seen in hindsight. We knew at the time it was rough. We knew at the time it was like the Steph threes thing. Holy cow, it's like every night he's basically a threat to block 5 shots right now. So I just want to like, okay, let me give you a few Wembanyama hot takes that I genuinely believe these things. Like, I'm not just a throw out a hot take and that way I'll get to victory lap it later as like, oh, this was my prediction. Like, I think these are real things. So tell me which one of these 3 hot takes that you think is the hottest, or which one is the most believable. I think number 1, Victor Wembanyama finishes top 7 in MVP next year as a sophomore. And I do not choose young players to win MVP. History does not pick young players to win MVP or players on bad teams. That's how good he is. Top 7 next year. Number 2, Victor Wembanyama wins at least 3 MVPs in his career. And I bet against certainty. I bet on bad things happening and injuries and uncertainty and all of that. I think he wins at least 3 MVPs in his career. And number 3, and I'm dead serious, I think Victor Wembanyama right now is on track to be a top 10 all-time NBA player. Those are my 3 Wembanyama takes. What do you think?
All right, well, we'll do these in terms of spiciness, where 0 is like that's a completely reasonable position, and 5 is a that's absolutely insane. We'll do it in ghost peppers. So top 7 MVP next season is still like a 3 because you got to factor in the team success. But the fact that I'm not like that's a 4 or a 5 is indicative of, like, I've argued this, that when the Spurs are ready to put the guys around him, that's going to be very quick. They were shopping at the deadline for immediate upgrades. And they basically I really like what they did, actually. I know everyone was like losing their minds when he wasn't playing next to a point guard. They took 2 months of the season and slow rolled it. And we're like, hey, let's get Sohan some minutes, trying to create some developmental minutes, figuring this stuff kind of out. And then like, all right, we've done that. It's like he's better, but he's not going to be like a lead ball handler. Let's transition. Let's protect Wembanyama early in the season. He was like, let's protect Wembanyama. Let's put him next to a center. Even if it's Zach Collins, we'll let Zach Collins basically take the beating, and then that'll protect Victor. Okay. You know what? Victor's handling the physicality better than we thought he did. Let's move him to 5, and we'll start a point guard. And like since then, it's been like, oh shit. And it's been absolutely just banana cakes what they've looked like with him. And they're still losing games because the team's terrible. The roster's going to need a big overhaul, and I don't know how much they can get done in a year. But the fact that like his individual performance is so impactful, and that to me is the crazy part, Brandon, is like my thing is you talk about the things that you're very set on. My thing is like, look, young guys don't impact the game. They just don't. They have to learn how to do that. Victor right now is 21st in EPM.
Oh my gosh.
In his rookie season for a god-awful team is 21st in EPM. That's nuts. And so that one is not that spicy. It's spicy, but not that spicy. Top, what was the number all time?
At least 3 MVPs, top 10 all time.
Okay. 3 MVPs. Boy, that one's tough. I'm going to give that one 4 Ghost Peppers just because so much has to go right to win MVP. Yeah. Like you can't just be like first team All NBA. What's the over under right now on first team All NBA selections for this kid? If we say that he plays 15 years in the league, how many of his seasons will he be first team All NBA if he plays 15 seasons?
So the only reason I'll temper it slightly is because we just switched All NBA and we don't require a center anymore, which I think probably would have helped him because he probably just locks that one up for like a decade.
Yep.
But I'm still going to give you a line on first team All NBAs of 8.5 over under.
I would have said 9.5. So like I would bet the over at 8.5. I think he's gonna be All NBA in like 10 of 15 seasons. Yeah. And you gotta understand, like if you're listening to this, like I have a friend who's very much like, why is everyone so excited about this kid? He's so slight, like he can't bang down low at all. Like he's so overhyped, et cetera, et cetera. And I just tried to explain to him, and I was like, you gotta understand, like I've seen this stuff. Like I am skeptical. I am someone like that's now an old head who's like, man, you don't like, okay, yeah, but that's how I'm wired now. And I still watch this kid, and I wrote this about him, and it's my favorite thing about him. There's just nothing you've ever seen like him.
Nothing.
We can argue good, bad, great, amazing. If you watch a Victor Wembanyama game, you will just see stuff that you're like, I've never seen that on a court before.
Every game.
The one for me,
you'll see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I forget which one he won recently where he was so dominant, but the one for me was actually a Raptors game where it was pretty recent. And like, I've been like, yeah, he's great. He's going to be amazing. But I sat down and I watched this Raptors game 3 weeks ago, and I was like he was the best player on the floor by a mile, and he destroyed a well-coached team with a fair amount of talent in the Toronto Raptors team, and he was everywhere. There wasn't anything they could do with him. And then top, I apologize. Is it 15 or top 10
all-time NBA player?
Top 10. I'm only going to give that one a 2 on the spicy scale.
Wow.
Because yeah. For me, there's just so much runway for this kid, and like the injuries are something here. But I will just say, like, look, the injuries, I don't think that we're so much better about it now.
Yeah,
like we're just better at injury maintenance. That's why players are playing longer. And he's got a staff in San Antonio that, regardless of what happened with Kawhi, I do not have like a number of like, oh man, they've really mismanaged that stuff. So if he's healthy, I don't know how he gets there. So to me, it's like, yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be the back end, I think, of 10. But boy, that's what he looks like. That's how good this kid seems.
The comp that I've given out for him recently, and again, I do not say this lightly. I understand what this comp is saying. I think that he reminds me, watching him right now, of Kevin Durant 2.0. Kevin Durant, if you added 6 inches, Kevin Durant, if you made him the best defensive player, maybe like in the history of basketball, possibly the way that Victor might develop. And sorry, Kevin, if you're listening, Kevin Durant, if he had that will to win, that like, I got to go out and just like punch these guys in the mouth and go get it. Like that thing that we as fans are frustrated wishing Durant like stuck with the team and had the my team thing. Like Victor's has that already, like that dog in him. All the words that I don't say, Matt, that you're gonna like hear from all the scouts about Victor Wembanyama. He has all those things. He has all the swear words in his package about his game. That's what all his thing. Like my dad and I watched the game earlier, like a week ago. They played the Timberwolves. So the Timberwolves are the local team. We get all the games here on TV. So we watched Spurs Timberwolves. And like 5 minutes into the game, Wembanyama blocked a dude at the rim, got the rebound himself, just naturally started dribbling up court. The crazy thing to me about all this is how smooth and normal it all looks. It should not be normal to like dribble between your legs 3 times and then pull up for a step back jumper 4 feet behind the 3-point line as a 7'5" rookie. Shouldn't be normal for anybody to do that. Should not be normal for a like creative player on NBA 2K to do that. And he's doing it nightly. So he blocks a shot, rebound, dribbles up the court, fully fluid, natural, gets to about the 3-point line. And I believe Kyle Anderson and Jaden McDaniels are in this play. 2 very good defenders on the number 1 defensive team. And Wembanyama, without hesitating, goes behind the back, just totally blows by the first defender, is into the lane, and like pretty much I think could have just stepped and dunked, but was like, nah, you know what? That seems too easy. What if I go Tracy McGrady and throw the ball off the backboard to myself? Didn't convert it because he got fouled and went to the line. That would have been like the top play in the career of all but like 25 NBA players. And he just tried it 5 minutes into a game as a rookie, audaciously, just because why not? He just tried it as a thing to do. Like I told my dad, I was like, you watched growing up, like, is this like when Larry Bird just shot left-handed just because? Like, why not? Like, I could probably do that. Let's try it out. Like, this is what happens. I like start doing gibberish when I watch Wembanyama. Every game I watch him, he makes 5 plays that would be the best play of your life for nearly every other NBA player that are just normal things he's doing now. I don't know how to hyperbolize him enough. One more, like, this almost is too easy. Like, this is a 0 on the 1 to 5 Ghost Pepper scale. He's going to set the record for most defensive player of the year's 1. Dikembe Mutombo and Ben Wallace have 4. He's going to break the record, and he might like double them or something. Like, he's just going to start winning it. He could have like minus odds on that award before the season and make the award almost obsolete from a betting standpoint.
And Chet Holmgren's going to set the record for most second place finishes. Like,
that's true.
It's ridiculous. I want to ask you this, based off of your preseason analysis, what surprised you the most about Victor?
I just think how soon it's come around. I don't think I'm so stunned that this version existed, but I think I would have expected, especially on so bad of a team, for it all to just feel so normal and so fluid. And so like I would have thought that me, the guy who hasn't really watched much NBA because of football and life getting in the way, but checks out ESPN's highlights, I would have thought I'd be the guy wrongfully overhyped on Victor, because he'd be like, oh yeah, well, cool, he had those 2 or 3 super sweet plays, but he's like a -4 BPM player because he's getting dunked. Like the game we just watched this week against Şengün, that's what I thought we were getting the whole season from Victor. I thought he'd have some super cool plays and then get dunked into the basket by actual NBA players for a couple of years while he figured things out. So just that he's physically ready. And I think too, the biggest reason, other than the injury body thing, that I was not in on him for Rookie of the Year is I did not think he would be enough of an engine. I didn't think he'd have the ball in his hands enough. The way he's been able to play from the perimeter, bring the ball up, initiate the offense, I thought he was a really good passer. I really liked that about him as a scout. I didn't think he'd get to pass much because I didn't think he had the ball as much as he does. Like, he plays like Kevin Durant on offense. And I did not think, like, I thought that was like a year 6 Wembanyama thing, that maybe he'd get there eventually. The staggering thing to me, the thing that's shocked me the most, is how quickly he has gotten to the stage he's at. I'm not stunned he got there, but I thought it was a thing we'd be talking about like half a decade from now. And every month he's developing like a year of an NBA player's career. So I had a question on here too. I don't even know what the answer is to this. What is, give me your one game Victor Wembanyama stat line, like points, rebounds, steals, blocks, assists. Give me the wildest Wembanyama stat line that he'll have in his career that's so outrageously wild, but still actually like conceivable that could happen.
There's a book right now that has a bet up. Victor Wembanyama to record a quadruple double in any 2023-24 regular season game at 55-1. And like I thought about it. The number is like the craziest stat line he will ever have is 37 points, 18 rebounds, 12 assists, 11 blocks, and 6 steals. Which is just, that is an incomprehensible combination of numbers. Like, it's for me to say that he's going to have 11 blocks in the game, that's impossible. Like, and it's just crazy that for him to do this with this kind of usage. So I just think it's the ceiling is the floor. The floor is the ceiling. Whatever. Like the ceiling, the floor is the roof. It's the stuff that he can accomplish, especially in this era of increased offensive efficiency, is going to be unheard of, particularly when the Spurs get the means around him to optimize him. And he's just getting started, and it is something incredible to watch. What's like the craziest one that you can think of?
I honestly, like, the line that you said feels conservative to me. Here's my craziest line. So first of all, the quadruple double, don't make the bet. It's a bad bet. 55-1 simply to block 10 shots in a game would be too low of a number, but to have to add in the 10 assists, like the steals record is either 11 or 12, I forget. Like, you don't get the steals very much. Assists he's gonna have to get, and so don't do that. That was actually 100-1 like a week ago, and I had some people asking me then and said no also. If you gave me that line just for 10 blocks, I might think about it, just to isolate that. That said, that's just for this season. If books would list Victor Wembanyama in his life to accomplish this, like if I could bet on career accomplishments, over under 2.5 MVPs, over under 6.5 defensive player of the years or whatever, I don't know what line they'd have to give me for it. I would smash Victor getting a quadruple double sometime in his career. It's definitely going to happen. The line that I'm going to give you right now is, I have an article that I have half written from like 5 years ago. I did full on research, because it's me, of course I did, trying to figure out, could it ever happen? Would it ever happen? Could we see in the NBA a thing that's never happened before? Could we see a quintuple double? And that's the line I'm giving you, Matt Moore. Victor Wembanyama in his career will have at least 10 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, 10 blocks, and 10 steals in a single NBA game.
Good God. Good God. I don't even know what to do with that. Before we get out of here, I do want to hit on a point of disagreement between us that I think is worth talking about. There's a lot of teams, and I'll have you back on. We'll talk about this in the next coming weeks about some of the playoff picture stuff and who we were buying and who we're selling. But this is one I do want to kind of get into you with, because when you kind of came back and you started doing research, you hit up the text group that we have with you, me, and Raheem, former member of the show, now at the Ringer Gambling Show. And you were like, why is everyone buying the Clippers? Yeah. And as someone that like had bought a lot of Clippers stock before you texted this, it was like, well, I know they're in a slump now. And I think, and people are kind of bailing of like, I'm never going to, somebody tweeted the other day, like, I'm never, ever going to trust the Clippers. And I get it. I do think it's okay for them to have this slump, given how well they played over that stretch. They have balanced things really well. I'm not going to, like, honestly, here's the thing is I should mention, like, the Russell Westbrook injury doesn't really impact how I view the team. Yeah. Like, that sucks for Russ that I'm at that point in his career, but that's where I'm at. My biggest concern with the Clippers and all of the NBA Finals matchups that I have with them is Ty Lue still goes to these small ball
Yeah.
lineups, and it gives them. He thinks it's like a different look, and I'm just like, man, no one's scared of this anymore in 2024. No one's scared of you putting Kawhi at 5. That's not the death. Like the death lineup is gone because the bigs now can score and they can shoot and they can cover ground. Like everyone can do this, and if you can't do those things, you don't play. And so they have, most of these teams have guys that can guard to 5 and control the glass at the same time. So you're going to get killed on the glass, and you're not going to have a spacing advantage that you did back in 2016 when you won the title. But I am curious about what it is about the Clippers that makes you as skeptical as you are on them, given that LA, I think, grades out really well. They're 3rd in offense, 12th in defense, despite the rough start to the year. They had a prolonged stretch where they were absolutely one of the top 3 best teams in basketball. And from like late December through January, they were, I think, probably one of the 3 best teams in basketball. They're getting great. They've gotten great games from Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi's playing back-to-backs, which I want to give him a lot of credit for. Those guys have competed on the second night of back-to-backs this season. They have balance. They're getting good minutes from Terrence Mann and Norman Powell. They have depth. They have versatility. What is it about the Clippers that you're just kind of like, same old Clippers? I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in between. I think it's not quite an same old Clippers, but it's certainly not a belief in the Clippers. It's somewhere in the middle of that. They feel like a team that's gonna lose in the second round to me. The profile, you know how I am on 4 factors. So the 4 factors profile for them, like when I do my kind of mid-season check-in, catching up and everything, I'm starting like the big picture and then starting to zoom in on things. The 4 factors just kind of underwhelm me. There's nothing bad. There's nothing bad about them, but really, it basically, the 4 factors for them says you're kind of like above average to average on mostly everything except for the most important one, which is effective field goal percentage. When I checked, they were, I believe, 6th in EFG on offense and 8th on defense. I'm not sure where that's at exactly at the moment, but basically, the numbers, the profile told me they're kind of just the average at all the stuff, turnovers and rebounding, all those things, but they're just going to outshoot you, and they're going to make more shots on their end, and they're going to stop you from making more shots on your end. And turns out that's a pretty good winning formula. Like EFG is by far the most important of the 4 factors, but the concern to me is what's the backup plan? What happens on the night when the opponent just hits all the shots, like the Celtics did against the Warriors and won by 1,000? When the Celtics are shooting like that, okay, your defensive profile and 4 factors didn't hold up anymore. What happens when the Clippers don't make their shots? Like, what happens when shot variance plays in? And, that plays out over the season, but in a short sample, in a playoff series, in a 1-game, game 7, now you don't control that anymore. You don't get to control the shot variance. Don't have to tell Celtics fans after the Heat last year. Like, we see how this plays out at times. And I think just we're kind of fine at all the stuff, but we're just going to outshoot you and stop you from outshooting us method. I just have a hard time getting there on that. I think James Harden has been fantastic. I think James Harden is doing exactly the stuff we have begged him for years to do. I think that their shot profile offensively and all their guys shooting a wild 3-point percentage, I think James gets some credit for that. Like, that's what happens wherever James Harden goes. He's creating that. So I think he should have been an all-star. I think he's been great. I think Kawhi Leonard's been very good. Credit, I agree, for playing the back-to-backs. I think also, I'm going to compare Kawhi Leonard to Joel Embiid here. You see what happens when you have an elite level player, which both of those guys are, but you got to play every night and you got to play all the back-to-backs. We get more value over the season, but we get less crazy high peaks. That's what happens when you play like most of the games like Kawhi is, when you don't get to just pick and choose the games and take off games. And I know that's the whole can of worms with Embiid, and I know he's actually hurt and all that, but like, we do the games played thing and the rest played. Like, you and I both would prefer just less games in the NBA because we get the better product. We get the right answer to it. But like, if you want the rule to say you got to play every night, we're going to get a really good Kawhi Leonard that's not quite the elite peak Kawhi Leonard, because that's the trade-off you're getting if you want him to play back-to-back and 3-4 and all of that. He's been great. I thought there was that time where I think when we were texting, he was in the MVP conversation. And by that, I mean like the fifth guy, like, shouldn't he be in? Shouldn't we be saying his name fourth or fifth with these other guys? It was never quite there, I think, because he can't put that defensive effort out night after night right now. He can't quite hit the level we've seen in the playoffs, the God mode Kawhi. I can't be totally out on the Clippers in case God mode Kawhi playoffs is still in there. It basically has been every time he's been healthy for the playoffs. I'm skeptical just because it's PG and Kawhi and Harden and their health and playoff history. I'm skeptical that we're going to get 2 months of them being healthy after we've basically just got 7 months of them being healthy and played the most that they've played in their career. Like, that's not how human bodies work. I want them to play. I want them to be healthy. I'm skeptical. The Russ thing doesn't bother me. PG's been fine. Zubac's been great for them. The bench is good. They got a lot of dudes. I like Ty Lue. I just, if I did the Brandon thing and disappeared for a few months again and came back in July and said, so what I miss, I just don't know what the world is, where the what I missed is, Brandon, the Los Angeles Clippers are the NBA champions. Let's talk about how we got here. I just feel like that's make-believe. And it's going to have to be, you talked earlier about like you can lose bets sometimes. So to come back around to we're past NFL, when we're down to the final 5 NFL teams heading into the last night before we got to the final 4, I had great NFL futures positions on 4 of the 5 teams. I had the 49ers and the Lions in the NFC. They were the last 2. I had the Ravens and I had the Bills. They were the teams that I had all backed at different points all season. I built this grand portfolio. Raheem in our text thread was in on the Chiefs. You are a Chiefs fan. I think of Patrick Mahomes like Steph Curry, as that's how much I like him, but I was just like, nope, I can't do it. It's a bad number for the Chiefs. I'm not going to hedge. You don't need to have every single team. I'm not going to do it. I have 4 of the 5 teams. I'm in a winning position. I believe I literally texted in our thread, if Patrick Mahomes beats me, so be it. Guess what? Patrick Mahomes beat me, and Patrick Mahomes won you another championship. And I'm kind of fine with it. If you're going to, like, when you bet on sports, you're going to have to lose to the best sometimes. If Kawhi Leonard does awesome Kawhi things and wins a championship, I'm going to lose. And I'm going to enjoy watching it. And I'm going to lose my bet, lose my money. And sometimes those things just can happen both together. And I think that's where I'm at on the Clippers.
Good analysis. That's Brandon Anderson. You can catch him on Twitter and in the Action Network app at Wheaton Brando, Wheaton Brando. We'll have him back on in the very near future as he gets ramped up on NBA coverage heading into the playoffs. Appreciate you guys being with us. As a reminder, check out Live Buckets on Mondays and Thursdays on youtube.com/The Action Network. Over there and subscribe right now. My thanks to David Payne, our producer, as well as Hutton Jackson and the video crew getting us up over at youtube.com/The Action Network. We'll see you next time on Buckets. Till then, let's get buckets.